between the lines. Got to read between the lines.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of What's Going On. I'm your host, Tom D'Ambra. As always, we're very thankful you take the time from your busy day to view our program. And speaking of busy, my friends, it appears that the rats are scurrying on the sinking ship. And what I am speaking of is, before we get into this document that we've been covering for the last 3 weeks, what's going on, my friends, is President Donald Trump has taken off the gloves. He did offer all these criminals quarter in the beginning of his administration, but he's come to the understanding that there is a war being waged against him and the American people. And he understands what the end result is going to be if, in fact, he does not take the gloves off. And how we know the gloves are coming off is because the rats are scurrying. And what I mean by that is we have McCabe looking for immunity so he won't be prosecuted, and he's willing to tell all, ha ha ha. The other thing, my friends, is that if you look at what's going on with Page and Starks and all these other people that were involved, they're all scurrying. They're no longer making public statements. They've all lawyered up. They understand what is coming up. You also have to one big thing that has really hit me in the past months is the silence of Barry Soetoro. Now, I'm sorry, you know him as, what's his name again? Obama? Yeah, Obama, yeah. No, his real name, folks, is Barry Soetoro. And anyway, what we've done here, what's going on here is that, as we know, that he had organized various organizations that were going to work as ploys, work as literally as agents of provocateurs, as Albert Pike called them, the nihilist. The nihilist is one who agitates, one who destroys. And the silence of Barack Obama is really, really interesting to me, because when Trump first took office, Valerie Jarrett moved into his place, and that was going to be the command center of their organizations. And since all this since Trump has taken the gloves off, Obama's gone silent. Now, he has purchased a $1.8 million apartment in Dubai. And I find it interesting that he's bought this in Dubai, because we don't have an extrication treaty with Dubai. So if it gets too hot for Barry Soetoro, he's already got a place of establishment where he knows he's going to be safe and sound. And this is what we're looking at, folks. There's going to be a lot coming up with regards to prosecuting these people. But what I'm afraid of is that the American people are going to think that, okay, the deep state is over. Once we've cleaned this little branch of the deep state, that the deep state is cleaned up. My friends, the people that you are allowed to see have no control over policies or operations or what's going on. None. If you had a chessboard, folks, they are the pawns on the board. And yeah, I'm speaking about FBI director, special prosecutors. These people all take their marching orders from the creditors, the bankers. And what's going on here is that I think, because you see, the bankers and the powers to be, they consolidated all of the power into the executive branch. Now, I know they don't teach this in the public fool system anymore, but we have 3 delegations of power, a check and balances that was established in our government. And what they have done is they have consolidated all this power into the executive branch. So what's going on, folks, is that they thought they were going to have control of it always, because they have appointed presidents constantly, okay? And the only time they weren't able to is during the Reagan administration, but they were able to get Black Rose, George Bush, that was his CIA operation name, Black Rose. They were able to get him in as vice president. They did not expect Reagan to survive the Hinckley and other shooters that took place when Reagan was wounded. They didn't expect him. They expected him that he was going to die, and then they would have Black Rose in position of the executive branch. Now, what has gone on, my friends, is that all from Bush on up until Trump, they've consolidated the power, but they controlled the person that had the reins to that power, and that has since vanished because Trump is an outsider. Trump is a nationalist, and they've lost control of that seat of power that they have strengthened beyond what it was ever intended to be. So it's going to be very interesting what's going to happen in the future. And I just had to make comment on it before we get into this document because, folks, this is real history being made. The American people are about to see for themselves, if they go out and search for the information, exactly how government has been weaponized against the American people. And government is a weapon. Understand that. Government. Remember we broke that word down? To govern is to control, and ment is Latin for what? Mind. Control, mind. Government. Okay? So understand this document that we're reading here is the modus operandi of the fulfillment of what we're seeing today, of the weaponization of government. And understand, when this was written in 1979 and the one we covered in 1954, folks, the government wasn't as big as then. You had some alphabet agencies, but you didn't have this just conglomerate of alphabet soup agencies that have been weaponized against the American people. And the people who are in charge of all this, just as this document says, are what? The magnates of banking. Remember, we've read this to you about 4 times, this particular phrase of it. The magnates of banking. Folks, that's the creditors, that's the bankers that took over the issuance of our currency on December 23rd, 1913, while the Congress was away for the Christmas break. You understand that? And you know this act as the Federal Reserve, which is a private for-profit banking corporation. The Federal Reserve, the name, if you've been watching this program, you've heard this many times, the Federal Reserve's name was put in deceitfully by Paul Warburg, and what they wanted the American people to believe that it had something to do with the government, so they used the word federal. They knew they were going to confiscate all the wealth. We read this to you in the document from the book by G. Edward Griffith, The Creature from Jekyll Island. We read this document to you verbatim. There are 6 goals that they wanted to meet. And what was number 6? The 6th goal was, when the system collapsed, to place the burden on the American people. Can you say bailouts? Can you say co-sureties to debt, bonded chattel? That's the American people. We are bonded through our birth certificates and making us in a commercial venue of law, which we now have in this country. Everyone knows we used to have common law in America. What happened to it? Where'd it go? Who took it away? Who implemented law mercantile, commercial law? How did that happen? If you've been watching this show for all these years, we have covered that quite well. But this document that we are reading to you, and I want to give the nomenclature again, so you can go online, but I would advise you, if you don't want to be red flagged, do not look up this document. Just like Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, do not look up this document if you're afraid of being red flagged. Now, we all know from the Vault 4, Vault 7, Vault 8, from the Snowden briefs, from all that they're watching all of us. They've even gone public with it. as we've have said to you before, that they are watching all of us. They are constantly building portfolios on each and every one of us. But this document, written in 1979, is called Operator's Manual, Tango Michael, Sierra Whiskey 7905.1. Okay? TM as in Michael, Sierra Whiskey 790.1. Now, I'm not going to start at the very beginning because we're on week 4 with this document, but I do want to just briefly go through some aspects of this document, some language that we have covered in the past. I'm just going to try to read this verbatim to you, and then we are going to start where we ended off last week, which is the economic model. Because you got to understand, folks, that this literally is a method that was written in 1979 for the students of the controllers. This document was not put out to the public. It was never meant to be put out to the public. So let's get into it. Okay, and this is a brief synopsis of some things that I've already covered. I've already covered all these pages, but I just want to, for people who have not seen the previous shows, I recommend that you go to katv.org and watch the previous 3 shows, or you can go on YouTube, thanks to Bill who's putting these programs on YouTube, and you can watch them there. So, anyway, let's get back into this. All science is merely a means to an end. The means is knowledge. So if the means is knowledge, my friends, what is the opposite? What is the abstract of that? Where do they want to keep us? If their weapon, if their means is knowledge, they want us in a state of what? Ignorance. They want us to be in a state of ignorance. This is why the deliberate dumbing down of America has taken place with the public fool system. This is why we're entertained 24/7. This is why when things like Common Core, which doesn't make sense, because they don't want us to be able to reason. They don't want us to come to a conclusion using knowledge with the process of reason. But their means is what? Knowledge. Okay. All science is merely a means to an end. The means is knowledge. The end is control. Beyond this remains only one issue. Who will be the beneficiary? Cui bono. Every time something goes on, I've been saying this to folks since day 1 of this program. Cui bono. When something goes on, 9/11, whatever it may be, you have got to ask yourself, who is benefiting here? Did the American people benefit from 9/11? Absolutely not. Their sons and daughters go to facade wars to bleed for the banker's profit. Our liberties have been taken away and or restricted. Our taxes have escalated. Okay? So understand it. 9/11 was an inside job. And if you don't think so, then understand that you are indoctrinated and bathed in ignorance. Because you don't know about Building 7. You don't know about the stand downs. You don't know about the charges in the building. You don't know about the forensic evidence. There's so many things I could go on about just 9/11 alone that understand, if you really think that 19 hijackers outsmarted 16 intelligence and defense agencies of this country, you are really living in a world of facade and ignorance. And this is where the knowledge and the ignorance comes in, my friends. Because if we do not have knowledge, if you don't even understand there's a war being waged against us, how are we to have the means and the reasoning and the ability to defend ourselves against this war being waged against us? Because you may not even realize through incrementation that there is a war being waged against you. Oh, this is just how it is. No, it's not how it is, folks. And more importantly, it's not how it is supposed to be. And it doesn't have to be this way. Let us continue. In 1954, this was the issue of primary concern. Although the so-called moral issues were raised, in view of the law of natural selection, it was agreed that a nation or world of people who will not use their intelligence are no better than animals who do not have intelligence. Such people are beasts of burden and stakes on the table by choice and consent. They're talking about us. Do you remember, and I forget where it is right now, and we read this to you probably 2 or 3 years ago, where we showed you in law, it was written in law, that the language used to describe us was what? Beast. Do you remember that? This was in law, folks. This was in the CFR, I believe it was. Beast. We are beast. Animals who do not have intelligence. Such people are beasts of burden and sticks on the table by choice and consent. Consequently, in the interest of future world order, peace, and tranquility, it was decided to privately wage a quiet war against the American public with the ultimate objective of permanently shifting the natural social energy. What is natural social energy? Wealth, your sweat equity. Of the undisciplined and irresponsible, many into the self-disciplined, responsible, and worthy few. So in their eyes, we are the undisciplined, irresponsible many, and they're going to shift the wealth into the self-disciplined, responsible, and worthy few. That's them. See, there is an us and a them, my friends. In order to implement this objective, it was necessary to create, secure, and apply new weapons which, as it turned out, were a class of weapons so subtle and so sophisticated in their principle of operation and public appearance as to earn for themselves the name silent weapons. In conclusion, the only objective of economic research as conducted by the magnates of capital. Now here's that word, here's that term again. This is the 4th time this term has come up. Magnates of capital. Folks, that's the bankers that bonded you, that bonded your children, that own everything, your car, your land, your children, they're bonded. In the industries of commodities and services is the establishment of an economy which is totally predictable and manipulatable. In order to achieve a predictable economy, the lower class elements of society, that would be you and I, must be brought under total control, i.e. must be housebroken, trained, and assigned to yoke and long-term social duties from an early age, before they have an opportunity to question the propriety of the matter. In order to achieve such conformity, the lower class family unit must be disintegrated by a process of increasingly preoccupation of the parents and the establishment of government-operated daycare centers for the occupationally orphaned children. All the above has taken place. The quality of education to the lower class must be of the poorest sort. And how about very expensive? So that the moat of ignorance isolating the inferior class from the superior class is and remains incomprehensible to the inferior class. With such an initial handicap, even bright lower class individuals have little, if any, hope of extricating themselves from their assigned lot in life. This form of slavery, this form of what? This form of slavery is essential to maintaining some measure of social order, peace, and tranquility for the upper ruling class. Okay. I am going to stop there. Just one quick thing I want to go on just to sort of consolidate some things. The public cannot comprehend this weapon and therefore cannot believe that they are being attacked and subdued by a weapon. The public might instinctively feel that something is wrong, but because of the technical nature of the silent weapon and the ignorance, this is my adding, and the ignorance of the people, the lack of knowledge, they cannot express their feeling in a rational way or handle the problem with intelligence. Why? Because they have no intelligence. None. Your schools are indoctrination systems of ignorance. Of ignorance. They're too busy deciding which bathroom the kids are going to use. What freak we're going to let use the bathroom with your children. And you accept it. Why do you accept it? Because you live in a state of ignorance. You don't understand this is every little particle of this war is a web to capture us. And we're captured. We're in the web, folks. We are in the web. We don't own anything. We have no money. We live in a state of ignorance. The family unit is in the United States is disintegrating. The government's out of control. Taxes, foreign agencies, all of it. It's all manifested itself, folks. It's here. Let us continue. Therefore, they do not know how to cry for help and do not know how to associate with others to defend themselves against it. And that is their biggest fear, and I've been saying it from day one. Their biggest fear, my friends, is us. Not you, not me, us. You see, they got the American people trained to look in this divide paradigm of left and right. But what they don't want us to understand is the divide paradigm of up and down. This is where we're at. They fear that and they fear us, folks. Zbigniew Brzezinski spoke about it 3 years ago, publicly. He said there is a political awakening happening in the world as the world has never witnessed in its history. They're afraid of us, folks. You may not believe it, but we have power. You don't have power. I don't have power, but we have power. And our weapon to manifest this power and direct it in a positive avenue for redemption is knowledge, the very same weapon that they use against us every day. Therefore, the silent weapon is a type of biological warfare. It attacks the vitality, options, and mobility of the individuals of society by knowing, understanding, manipulating, and attacking their sources of natural and social energy and their physical, mental, and emotional strengths and weaknesses. You get it? The whole thing is manipulation, my friends. And what are they attacking? What is our social energy? This is the wealth. Remember the acronyms, that the analogies they used earlier? So these students could understand this? And you wonder why your children are being raised by daycare centers while 62% of the wealth of the average family member goes to taxes or the government through various means. So you think about that. That's what they meant about occupationally orphaned children. because they were going to raise the taxes so much that guess what? They would destroy the family unit by occupationally orphaning the children because both parents had to work now to cover the tax burden. And look at the welfare system. The welfare system works like this. Oh, you have a sperm donor, which to the mother, which used to be known as a father. Well, if that sperm donor, if the father is in the household, you can't get welfare. Does that make sense to you? It makes perfect sense to me because I understand their objective. Do you know if you get, as they call it in Russia, social grace? We know it as welfare. Do you know why they chose the word welfare? Here's why. They didn't want to say it was a transfer of wealth. They used the word welfare because one of the missions in the founding documents was for the government to look for the general welfare of the people. So they took that term and put it into a Marxist, Orwellian newspeak. Are you with me? All it was a transfer of wealth, folks. So that social energy, when you hear the sources of natural and social energy, understand that is our collective wealth. Okay. So, last week we also talked about the development of the computer sciences. And we read to you verbatim how in 1948 they were already using computers. That's right, 1948. And you thought Al Gore invented the internet. Eventually, every individual element of the structure comes under computer control through a knowledge of personal preferences, such as knowledge guaranteed computer association of consumer preferences. Can you say universal product codes on packages? With identified consumers, identified via association with the use of credit card, and later, when technology allows, a permanent tattooed body number invisible under normal ambient illumination. Can you say RFID chips? Okay. Economics is only a social extension of all natural energy system. It also has three passive components. Because of the distribution of wealth and the lack of communication and consequent lack of data, this field has been the last energy field for which knowledge of these three passive components have been developed. And what they're saying to you right there, my friends, that is 1954, and they didn't have the knowledge, they didn't have the ability, but in 1979, because of the development of the data sciences, they now saw the avenue for them to implement this. That's what they're saying here. So, let me just continue. Since energy is the key to all activity on the face of the earth, it follows that in order to attain a monopoly of energy, raw materials, goods, and services, and to establish a world system of slave labor. Folks, I'm not embellishing this. I'm reading this verbatim to you. What was their mission? To establish a world system of slave labor. Who do you think the slaves are? They've already told you who the slaves are. And what was their other mission? There was two missions here, if you watched this program a couple of weeks ago. What was it? Slavery and genocide. Remember that? That was their ultimate goal here. Slavery and genocide. It is necessary to have a first strike capability in the field of economics. In order to maintain our position, it is necessary that we have absolute first knowledge of the science of control over all economic factors and the first experience at engineering the world economy. In order to achieve such sovereignty, we must at least achieve this one end. that the public will not make either the logical or mathematical connection between the economics and other energy sciences to learn to apply such knowledge. Keep you in a state of ignorance and entertainment. And when they want to steer you down a certain avenue, they go back to the Hegelian dialectic, crisis, reaction, solution. Create a crisis, get the emotional response you want from the people. As George Hegel said, you've got to have fear, but if you can put some anger in that recipe, even the better. And then you bring in the solution that the people will welcomely give up their liberties, their rights, because of the emotional response that was created by bringing forth the crisis in the first place. Very simple, isn't it? Again, cui bono. Who's benefiting? Okay. So, folks, I'm going to stop there. That was just a brief synopsis, hand-selected some of the language. So if you're watching the show for the first time with this particular document, that you understand what we're getting into. Okay. Now, subtitle, The Economic Model. And I want to make sure you have a good understanding of this. Economics as a social energy science has a first objective, the description of the complex way in which any given unit resources is used to satisfy some economic want. Now, if you want to look up this science deeper, what they're talking about is called the Leontief matrix. And I remember studying this probably 15 years ago. And what it basically is, my friends, is that how to use requirements in nature, in our bodies, and or desires, entertainment, and how to use it to satisfy some economic want. I'll give you an example. Commercials. Commercials, you look at a commercial and the economic want is that they want you to go and purchase that particular product that has spent the money producing and broadcasting the commercial. So that's the economic want, the desire that they're going to create a desire on your end for you to go out and buy that product. Or they're going to develop a need that you are going to say, boy, I really need that, and I'm going to go out and buy that. So that's what the Leontief matrix is. How to get people to act through economic means for the economic desire for you to say, purchase that product. That's what they're talking about here. And they also do this with the indoctrination systems. And they also do this through weaponized government, putting fear in us. Because after all, you can't fight City Hall, right? Remember that old saying? How about another saying they put in our minds? Oh, two things are inevitable in life, death and taxes. Right? You see, so the want is that you don't feel that you have the capability to fight back, to say no, to question. You get it? That's the Leontief matrix. That's what they're talking about. And I hope I described that enough for you. That's not in the document, folks. That's just me trying to explain what they're talking about here. Okay. This first objective, when it is extended to get the most product from the least or limited resources, comprises that the objective of general military and industrial logistics known as operations research. Why do you think the title of this program, of this document, has to do with technical operations? Operations research. Its purpose is to discover the science of controlling an economy. At first, the American economy, and then the world economy. And we go back to this other page. To what? To form a world slave economy. And when we go back to the second page that we read to you some weeks ago, what was their mission? World slavery and genocide. And you think the government is a benevolent organization looking out for your well-being. How foolish are you to think that way? All they do is take from us, they regulate us. Think about this, folks. It was felt that with sufficient mathematical foundation and data. Here we go again. Mathematical. What was it that Senator Lindbergh said that we've read to you many times? Once the bankers took over in 1913, while the Congress was away for the Christmas break, once the bankers took over the money system, what did Charles Lindbergh Sr., Senator Charles Lindbergh Sr., say to the American people? That recessions and depressions would now be formed as easily as calculating a mathematical formula. Why? Right here. They just told you why. With sufficient mathematical foundation and data, it would be easy to predict and control the trend of an economy as to predict and control the trajectory of a projectile. What they're talking about with trajectory of a projectile, folks, for those of you that are in the shooting sports, it's called ballistic coefficients. You can easily figure out the trajectory of any projectile if you understand ballistic coefficients. And you can easily create, predict, and control an economy as long as you have sufficient mathematical foundation, economic mathematical foundation, and data. It's very simple. And you think all these swings that go on all the time are just the way things are in an economy. No. They are fomented. Let us continue. Such has proven to be the case. In other words, they've done it. Moreover, the economy has been transformed into a guided missile on target. Did you see? So what is their objective, folks? Their objective is what? Slavery and genocide. Using what? The means is knowledge. The means is keeping us in ignorance. The modus operandi is capturing our sweat equity and then through foundational economic mathematical data predicting, controlling, and manipulating our economy. And this is why we are bonded. This is why there is no gold or silver backing our medium of exchange. This is why we do not have dollars. We have Federal Reserve notes, a script of a private, for-profit banking institution that you know is the Federal Reserve. This is why Senate Document 43, which says plainly from the congressional record that all property is in the state and subordinate to the necessities of the state. Why? Because you do not own it. You cannot own it. We are in a commercial law system, law mercantile, no longer a common law system. You see how economics affects everything, folks? Amschar Rothschild said it the best. You give me control of a nation's currency, I care not who makes its laws. Why? Because if you control the currency, you control everything else. Everything. And this is where we're at. This is where we are at. Let us continue. The immediate aim of the Harvard Project, now the Harvard Project was the computer data that was started in 1948. Yeah, I did say that, folks. They were using computers already online in 1948. And when I say online, I'm not talking about the World Wide Web. I'm talking about they were using them on their line. They were collecting data, making portfolios. They were doing it all, folks. The only reason why they put the World Wide Web out was to capture us in the web. That's why. 1948. The immediate aim of the Harvard Project was to discover the economic structure, what forces change that structure, how it can be manipulated. What was needed was a well-organized knowledge of the mathematical structures and interrelationships of investment, production, distribution, and consumption. To make a short story of it all, it was discovered that an economy obeyed the same laws as electricity and that of all the mathematical theory and practical computer know-how developed for the electronic field. Hence the word currency. Again, back to the analogies that we read to you verbatim for the students of this document would be 4 weeks ago now. So I can't go through all that again, folks, for the sake of time, but I invite you to go back and watch that because you'll understand exactly what they're talking about with the analogy of electricity. The social wealth, folks, is the currency. That's the energy traveling through the wires. That's what they're speaking of. Your sweat equity. That the developed for the economic field could be directly applied in the study of economics. This discovery was not openly declared, of course it wouldn't be, and its more subtle implications were and are kept a closely guarded secret today. For example, that in an economy model, human life is measured in dollars. Whoa, 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 whoa. Human life is measured in dollars. Did you ever think you would read a document where the sanctity of life was not measured in value of human beings, but rather in sweat equity, dollars, value of sweat equity, of social energy. This is why you're bonded, my friends. This is why you have a birth certificate, because that bond maintains and carries a value, so the insolvent corporation USA Inc. can use you as collateral to maintain their status with the creditors, the bankers. Are you with me? It's very simple. The social wealth is your sweat equity. That sweat equity has been captured and transferred into a dollar, I hate using that word, into a monetary value, a credit system. Are you following me? This is why you're bonded. And this is how we became a co-surety to this facade debt. Think of that. And the measure of it is in the bond. And it's in your sweat equity that you do every day, paying 62% of your sweat equity to the insolvent various alphabet agency corporations. This is why you don't own anything. This is why, and their means to do this was what? Knowledge. They created this system. They implemented this system. They control this system. They use this system every day. Yet they keep this knowledge secret from us. Why? Because the means of redemption and extricating ourselves out of this system is knowledge. So if our means to extricate and have remedy in this system is knowledge, well, to keep us in a state of slavery is what? Ignorance. Why is not every public fool system in this country reading this document? Why don't they read the Constitution of the United States? Either one of them. Yes, there are two. And we've read this to you verbatim. Constitution of the United States, Constitution for the United States. Why is there a difference? Why is there a difference from one or the other? From the founding document to 1871 after the Civil War. Why did they create a thing which we have gone over with you some years ago called the Lieber Codes, written by Francis Lieber? It was because they had to come up with a means, again, of controlling the people and manipulating the people and keeping them in a state of ignorance. But they didn't have computers and electronics at the time to do it. So they came up with the Lieber Codes. Francis Lieber. L-I-E-B-E-R, read it. You want to get, this is, folks, why do you think Albert Pike in 1871 wrote out how they were going to format 3 world wars? We've read that to you verbatim. Why is not the public fool system teaching this? Because the public fool system is controlled by UNESCO, United Nations Education, Scientific, Cultural Organization. The bankers. You get it? You are a slave. What's a slave? A slave is opposite of a free man. A slave acts upon the duress and duration of another person. A free man acts openly and willingly of his own free will. What do you do? Look in the mirror. Are you a slave or are you a free man? We're slaves, folks. I'm a slave. I openly admit it. And I didn't learn that in the public fool system either. All right, let us continue. Which are kept a closely guarded secret. For example, that an economic model of human life is measured in dollars. And that electric spark generated when opening is a switch connected to an active inductor is mathematically analogous to the initiation of a war. The greatest hurdle which theoretically economists faced was the accurate description of the household as an industry. This is a challenge because consumer purchases are a matter of choice, which in turn is influenced by income, price, and other economic factors. They've got that figured out, don't they? Folks, as I've said to you, they've got to analyze on all of us. They have figured us out. They have portfolios on every single one of us, including if you were born after 1978, your DNA. That's right, mothers. You give permission to the hospital to take your baby's blood and form the first portfolio of it using its blood DNA. You didn't know that? You weren't taught that in the public school system? I'm surprised. And the other thing you did as you were signing papers without reading is you bonded your children with the birth certificate because you were the only person from the natural relationship with that baby, because that baby is not old enough to negotiate contract yet, but you with the natural relationship mother with that baby have the right to negotiate contract for that baby, and you just wanted to get out of that hospital. I understand it. Sign here, sign here, sign here. Well, you just gave permission to have the DNA portfolio started with your baby, and you bonded your baby with the birth certificate. You know, about 25 years ago, I went to the Office of Risk Management to get the original copy of my birth certificate. And you don't have the original copy of your birth certificate, folks. You have to go to the capital of the state you were born in, and you have to go to the Office of Risk Management. And you're saying, boy, I never even heard of that office. Well, you're not going to hear of that office because that's where all the bonds are kept. They don't want you to know about that office. So when I went there and I saw the very bottom, this is secured paper. What's that mean? It means it has value. Value, human life measured in dollars. You got it? And so what happens is, I look at the very bottom below that, very fine print, and it says Midwest Bank Note Company. This is secured paper, Midwest Bank Note Company. Folks, I was born 11/10/58. I was bonded 11/12/58 by the Midwest Bank Note Company. And there's two of them, the North American Bank Note Company and the Midwest Bank Note Company. And when you want to get to the top of that triangle, that who maintains all these bonds, who maintains the value for them, you will see is the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland. Leo Tolstoy. The essence of all slavery consists in taking the product of another's labor by force. It is immaterial whether this force be founded upon ownership of the slave or ownership of the money that he must get to live. Well, I got news for you, folks. They've been so successful, they've done it all. They've done both. They've done both. They've got control of the sweat equity, the social energy they speak of. They have fabricated human life into a dollar value by bonding us. And we do not have money. We have a Federal Reserve note script. And what's a note? An acknowledgement of debt. That's why there's two signatories on that bill. One's the creditor, one's the debtor. You're the co-surety to it. There you go, folks. There's a simple economics, 2-minute economic lessons that you're not going to get in the public fool system, that's for certain. Let us continue. The greatest hurdle with theoretically economists faced was the accurate description of the household as an industry. This is a challenge because consumer purchases are a matter of choice, which in turn is influenced by income, prices, and other economic factors. This hurdle was cleared in an indirect and statistically appropriate way by the application of shock testing the current characters called current technical coefficients of household industry. What did I say? For you reloaders, and the trajectory, projectiles, and trajectory. What did I say? Ballistic coefficiencies. How they figure it out? Household coefficiencies. And they're watching everything we do and take out of our fridges and wash and purchase and everything else with what? RFID chips. Folks, this is where we are at. And we're going to continue with this document next week. And we're going to get into the actual science, how they use the data to break us down, to assess us, to manipulate us, and ultimately to control us. Whether they send us off to war to bleed for their profits and have us pay for the cost of war and blood and sweat equity, or they keep us entertained. Either way, they keep us in a state of perpetual ignorance. And the means, as they describe to you, is knowledge. So, my friends, that's why we close this show always in asking you to seek knowledge. Seek knowledge. Discover truth. We always say, ask you to manifest kindness to your fellow man, and we always close in reminding you that your government is your responsibility. And as always, we thank you for watching.
Got to read between the lines. Got to read between the lines. Well, the truth is very simple, very hard to find.